Hey there guys, Portal Master here, and in today's video we're going to be continuing with a brief history of Skylanders, the series where I am examining all of the important moments from the Skylanders franchise history, breaking them down and talking about them in brief video form. Last episode we discussed the predecessor to the Skylanders franchise, which was of course Spyros Kingdom, and for those of you who have watched that video, and if you haven't watched that video, highly recommend watching it because we're going to be referencing it several times in this video, and it probably contains some information you don't know about. But anyway, in brief, I'll just assume you've watched it, but if you haven't, essentially what it talks about is what eventually became Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, which is the topic of today's video. So with that in mind, welcome back to A Brief History of Skylanders. Skylanders Spyro's Adventure was the first entry into the Skylanders franchise. It was released in October 2011 and pioneered the Toys to Life genre by doing something that had never been done before, at least in the way that it was done in Skylanders. Essentially, you have these little figures. This isn't from Spyro's Adventure, but you have the little figures, put them on the portal, they were read into the game, and that was something that had never been done before. As a result, you know, sometimes when you have these new groundbreaking concepts, sometimes they catch on, sometimes they don't. Well, in the case of Skylanders, it obviously caught on, and we ended up with the massive entertainment franchise known as Skylanders. But it couldn't have happened if Spyro's Adventure had not been a good game. So let's talk a little bit about that. Spyro's Adventure had been in development since 2009, but not in its current form. Again, it had been through many iterations, mainly Spyro's Kingdom. Originally, there were many different paths that the developers thought taking it down, maybe a more mature route, maybe not even really all that Spyro related at all. You know, there were a lot of different concepts that they toyed around with, but eventually they did decide to go with a Toys to Life aspect, and from that birthed the idea of Skylanders, and the original 32 characters were created. Well, who created it? It was Toys for Bob and Vicarious Visions jointly working together on both the console and 3DS versions. Vicarious Visions pretty much exclusively did the 3DS stuff, which we're not talking about in this series as of right now. The console stuff, however, was done by both Toys for Bob and Vicarious Visions, but it was mainly done by Toys for Bob, especially the characters design. That was almost exclusively done by Toys for Bob. Of course, it was published by Activision. Activision had the final say in what actually happened in all of the Skylander games, but they didn't actually create any of them. They just published them and gave the ultimate go-ahead for Toys for Bob and Vicarious Visions. In each of the videos discussing these Skylander games, we'll be talking about the figures, the price of the figures, and how I think that that affected the game's performance. The original game only came with 32 figures, which would actually be the fewest figures of any game for quite some time. Eventually Superchargers would come out with only 20 actual characters, but also 20 vehicles. As far as actual figures are concerned, Spyro's Adventure by far had the fewest. Basically, in order to purchase everything from Spyro's Adventure, you would need to buy one starter pack, 4 adventure packs, and then 25 individual characters. Many people don't realize this, but the individual characters were not actually priced at $10 when the game first came out. We'll get into this later, but the game completely sold out around Christmas time, and after that, they decided to raise the price on the figures. But prior to Christmas 2011, all of the individual characters were only priced at $7. As a result, when the game first came out, the total price needed to complete the complete collection of Skylanders figures was only a mere $350. After the Christmas rush came, the characters had their individual prices increased from $7 to $10. None of the other prices changed. Following this pricing scheme change, the price to get everything from Skylanders Spyro's Adventure was $450. At the end of this video series, we'll be compiling sort of a little bit of data talking about, you know, the pricing and the sales performance of all the different games and comparing them in our final video, but for now I just want to throw these numbers out there. The last statistic that I want to throw out in terms of pricing is the amount of money that it would have taken to have purchased everything needed to get all of the content in the game. This doesn't include the heroic challenges. In order to get everything present in Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, excluding the heroic challenges, it would have cost $185 for the average consumer. This would get you the starter pack pack, all 4 adventure packs, and then you would have a character of every element. That'd be 8 characters, but you'd have 2 water characters basically. So you need to go out and buy a single air character to supplement the characters you already had. You'd have 9 figures, 4 adventure packs, and then of course the starter pack. That's everything you would need. Being the first Skylanders game, there were definitely a lot of issues that were present with Spyro's Adventure outside of the distribution issues, which we'll get to in a moment. For starters, there was no post-game content for Spyro's Adventure other than arena and battle mode. That was basically all you had. So what this means is that once you beat the story, I forget how many how many chapters were in Spyro's Adventure. It was like 24 or 26. I don't remember off the top of my head. That's not a number worth remembering because some of the chapters were long and some of them were short. But either way, of all the levels, once you beat them, there wasn't anything else to do. You could beat the main missions, then you could go out and buy the adventure packs, and once you had exhausted your adventure packs, there was nothing else to do. If you wanted to grind gold and get the experience needed to level up your characters, you would just have to grind the levels again and again and again, rather than actually having any new content to do. This, of course, does have one exception, which was Arena Mode. Arena Mode was only present in the first 3 Skylanders games, so this was one of the only 3 games that actually had Arena Mode. And honestly, if it hadn't been for Battle Mode, there would have been no post-game content, and the later figures for this game probably would not have sold as well. One of the other problems with Spyro's Adventure is that it had no difficulty settings whatsoever. There was no easy, no medium, no hard, just one singular difficulty. Now, this wouldn't normally be a problem, but in a kid's game, it's a pretty big problem because there's a huge difference in skill level between your little kid, your 7-year-old that's playing this game, and then maybe your 14-year-old that's playing this game, and then maybe your parent playing this game. The parent's not going to get any enjoyment out of an easy game. The kid is going to find it too hard to play a very difficult game. So the lack of an inclusion of difficulty was a pretty big issue. And the biggest point where this became an issue was the final boss of Spyro's Adventure, which is almost impossible to beat with just the 3 starter pack characters. Like, it can be done, but even 11-year-old me struggled beating that final boss without going through like 16 different characters. So with that in mind, that was a pretty big issue that there was no difficulty settings, and they definitely fixed that in future games, but Spyro's Adventure did not have difficulty. That was an issue. And now let's talk about probably the biggest single issue with Skylanders Spyro's Adventure: the horrible, absolutely horrible distribution of Spyro's Adventure's figures. Alright, so before I get in here and I start roasting Activision for like, you're so bad at publishing games, you're so bad at distributing figures, let's clear something up here. Nobody had a clue. Nobody had an idea that Skylanders Spyro's Adventure would be anything close to the amazing release that it ended up being. This game sold over 5 million copies. I believe it was 5.28 million. For comparison, the Spyro Reignited trilogy, it sold just over 2 million, and it was considered an insane success for getting over 2 million copies. 5 million copies was not expected at all. Activision had no idea what they were dealing with. And this was really proven Christmas 2011. Honestly, not that many people bought the game in October. Most of the people that bought the game in October were gaming enthusiasts and collectors and reviewers and bloggers, etc. And what happened was they were like, hey, this is gonna be like the hottest kids toy of Christmas 2011. And you know what happened? Black Friday, gone. You know what happened? Christmas, gone. Everything just gone. Every single figure that had been released, which was just Wave 1 and Wave 2 at that point, gone. Except Boomer. Nobody liked Boomer. Boomer was ugly. Kids didn't want Boomer. Boomer didn't sell out. Every other Skylander completely sold out. Triple packs, you cannot find a single triple pack anywhere. Like, I got the game Christmas 2011, right? I bought a triple pack, I think maybe early January, and then never saw triple packs again until March. That's how insanely difficult it was to get triple packs for Spyro's Adventure. And in general, getting anything for Spyro's Adventure is honestly pretty insane. The fact that I managed to pick up every single character before Giants came out was honestly something that I didn't expect to happen, given how difficult it was to get the characters back in the day when Spyro's Adventure first came out. So distribution, absolutely horrible. For a long time, about the only characters you could get, I'm looking back on this shelf right now, you could get like Voodooed, you could get like Wrecking Ball, you could get, I don't know, Sonic Boom, maybe you'd find a Zap here and there, maybe a Prism Break. Any like the really cool ones, like Flame Slinger or like Whirlwind, you weren't finding them. Most of the other games, I can tell you exactly which characters were difficult to find. In Skylanders Giants, I can tell you right from now that Series 2 Bash was hard to find in America, Series 2 Drobot was almost impossible to find in Europe. I can pretty much tell you the distribution patterns of every character from Giants. From Spyro's Adventure, I can also tell you the distribution of every single Skylander that was available. Every character except Boomer, almost impossible to find. Boomer, everywhere, until he wasn't everywhere, and then he was impossible to find. That's basically it for Spyro's Adventure's distribution issues. But this served as a massive learning experience. And by the time Skylanders Giants rolled around, which will be the topic of the next video, they had fixed this distribution error. But it was a huge issue, and I seriously cannot state that enough. Let's talk about the other biggest issue with Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. Spyro fans hated the game. You know, you see those ads sometimes and they're like, she lost 40 pounds without going on a diet. Doctors hate her. Okay, it was this except with Spyro. It was like, game where Spyro is the central character but hardly gets any screen time at all. Manages to sell 5 million copies. Spyro fans hate him! That's essentially what happened with Spyro's Adventure. It was an issue of, okay, this character is now known by a generation of kids that have never known the character before, and I hate it. That's what it was, because, okay, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It wasn't a Spyro game. Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, despite having Spyro present in the game, it wasn't a Spyro game. It was nothing like the original Spyro games. It was a dungeon crawler. It bared no resemblance. I understood every Spyro fan's criticisms of Skylanders. It was nothing like the original Spyro games. But it was single-handedly responsible for ensuring that the torch of the Spyro fandom was passed to a new generation, and it's the biggest reason, honestly, why the Reignited trilogy was as successful as it was amongst my age demographic, because many of us are familiar with the character due to the fact that we know him from Skylanders. And honestly, the hate that the game got from Spyro fans was partially understood by me, because I'm like, okay, no, it's not a Spyro game, and as long as he's in these games, you know, Spyro's not coming back, which was very, very true. But at the same time, it wasn't a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. There's not a single Skylanders game that I think is bad. They're just not like Spyro games. And as a result, it did receive a lot of backlash from Spyro fans. Maybe you think it was justified, maybe you think it wasn't. Again, I see both sides, but that's just the way it was. It was hated by Spyro fans. And honestly, this is something I'm only addressing in this video because this is the case for the other 5 games in the Skylanders franchise. And honestly, they got more hated as time went on because Spyro became a less focal character in every, you know, installment afterwards, culminating in essentially games where Spyro wasn't even a figure at all. So that's pretty much it for talking about the Spyro backlash. I'm not going to be discussing that in any of the future videos. I want to get that out of the way in this video. So to summarize, Skylanders Spyro's Adventure was one of the most successful kids franchise video games of all time. Seriously, over 5 million copies sold across multiple platforms was no small feat. It sold out in every store Christmas 2011. It was the hottest holiday toy all the way into April, basically. Seriously, I'm not kidding. People were buying this like left and right all throughout 2011 and 2012. It was insane. I have never seen anything like it. Probably won't ever see anything like it again for some time. I'm sure someday there will be some kind of kids franchise that's gonna be extremely hyped up, just like Skylanders. Hasn't happened since then. Very interested to see what is going to be next. But nevertheless, Spyro's Adventure was so successful that it kicked off a line of Skylanders games The next of those being Skylanders Giants, which we will be discussing in next week's episode of A Brief History of Skylanders. This will probably be the longest video discussing the core games, so yes. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Portal Master. Shout out to all my patrons on Patreon, especially Portal Power TV. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, leave your comments down below. I will be doing a comment response video at the end of this series. That's all for now. See you guys next time.